Short days remain. Is there any room for surprise? A somewhat surprising announcement after the Supreme Court rules. Rather less surprise on the state budget front, and the hope for pleasant surprise as Arkansas Incorporated reports. Arkansas Week next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week. About a dozen days or thereabouts remaining before the nation votes, although we would take note that tens of thousands, indeed millions, are voting already. Heather Yates joins us, or have voted. Heather Yates joins us from the UCA Political Science faculty. Wesley Brown from Talk Business and Politics. Jacob Kaufman from KUAR Public Radio in Central Arkansas. I guess it qualifies as kind of a surprise this week, Heather. The Supreme Court, Arkansas Supreme Court took a little more action disregarding a master's report.
Yes, so in a 5-2 report that it was issued yesterday, issue number 7 has now been decertified from the ballot, and this reverses, yes, the master's report that the special appointed judge in earlier this month and in September had basically said, you know, the issue number 7, the Medical Cannabis Act, can stay on the ballot because the signatures or the challenges were just clerical technical errors and did not violate the 2013 Arkansas law that requires canvassers to be disclose their payment and have a background check. So that was reversed as of yesterday, 4 days into early voting, with about 141,000 ballots already cast. So this has sent the political world reeling about what does this mean? What does this mean for the ballot initiative? But that's the bare bones of the decision that came down yesterday.
And with this decision, they didn't invalidate all of these 67,000 plus signatures that issue 7 folks got. It was about 12,000 or so, mostly you're saying for them not having background checks done within a certain deadline for a lot of these canvassers. Not saying that the signatures are invalid, not saying that these aren't real Arkansas voters who want this on the ballot, but more just technicalities about how it's collected. And after they threw out, I guess, about 12,000 signatures, there was only about 2,000 or so shy of getting on the ballot. So it was a razor-thin kind of decision.
Yeah, and you looked at some of the opinions, and they were kind of varied, you know, as to, or all over the place. It will probably be kind of on the decision on issue 7. And I guess Heather posed that question: what will happen to people who've already voted and may have voted for issue 7? What will their votes mean? Do they get to vote again? You know, I doubt that, but still, those questions are in the air, and are going to be really interesting to see what kind of answers come out.
I guess that's always the consequence of early voting, though, is you never really know what's going to happen in the last 2 weeks of an election, whether it's a ballot issue or a presidential candidate or something.
Well, it's a risky run when you put something on the ballot, whether it's the General Assembly or by citizen initiative.
Right. Anything that, and especially with citizen petitions in this case, in most states in any other electoral year, this has not been a regular election cycle. And so heading into that November ballot, once the ballots are printed, it is hopefully a safeguard that it will not be reversed, because any challenges to citizen petitions have been filed within 3 to 4 months in advance. These petitions were challenged in September and October, which is an unusual timing. And what is also worthy to note is in the concurring opinions on the decision yesterday, the concurring justices even upholding the ultimate decision, but for different reasons, saying that, okay, so this does not signal that there was any fraud taking place, because the 2013 Arkansas law was to prevent fraudulent voters showing up on petitions in order to fraudulently get a ballot petition or a ballot issue on the ballot. So the justices were trying to make it very clear that we're concurring or even dissenting, saying that we're detecting no fraud. This is not a fraud statement, but it was clerical errors, basically, that removed and decertified these signatures.
And there's one opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think it's by Justice Courtney Goodson. She was one of the 5 in favor of invalidating these signatures, but she was even quoted in her opinion saying that the legislatures may have made it unduly difficult to get things on the ballot, but I guess not unconstitutionally difficult.
Right.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future, at some point, having just prior to the election, where these things won't happen, where you maybe a deadline for maybe bringing these issues to the high court or to the court, because I was looking at my ballot from the Pulaski County. And when they printed it 2 weeks ago, it looks nothing like what when you're going to go in the vote and what you're going to actually have to vote for. You're going to see when you go into the booth on November 8th. So.
Well, another matter of note on this question, we had 2 proposals initially regarding cannabis, medical marijuana, and there was some tension, obviously, between the 2 earlier. That seems to have abated at least enough to permit one to endorse.
Yeah, I imagine the tension within those parties is probably more tense than ever after this trial. But I guess issue 7 is the one that was taken off the ballot. That was the initiated act. It would have been administered by the Department of Health. It had maybe 40 or so conditions, less restrictions on getting access to the drug. Issue 6, it's still on the ballot. It's a constitutional amendment. It's run by the Alcohol Beverage Control Division and for-profit dispensaries. So those are the differences. But now you just only can choose yes or no on one of them.
Yeah, and it was interesting. There was an article in the USA Today that said, and I think the poll still showed that the medical marijuana issue is still it's struggling to I think 50 to 45 is kind of the vote disparity right now. But USA Today article said that on November 9th there will be more access to marijuana in the United States than there ever been at any time, because even if it doesn't pass in Arkansas, it's likely to pass in several other states during this election cycle. So it's moving forward, and I think we're going to see this on the Arkansas ballot until it either passes or we just continue to see it.
Because at least in the short term, the proponents for legalizing medical marijuana, they're no longer split. It's no longer divided as of yesterday. But this brings up a very interesting precedent in Arkansas context, because it brings up 2 issues. Number one, shifting a lot of burden to citizen petition groups on trying to get citizen originating issues on the ballot. And second of all, it brings up the question about the role of the courts in elections. Now that it's a more routine practice that the judiciary are intervening on ballot issues because they're being challenged more often, because state legislatures are passing legislation like Arkansas did in 2013 that lays an infrastructure for these challenges to come before the courts within months of the ballot issue. So that's also going to be a lingering question that we'll be probably revisiting in the next election cycle.
And we've got at least one state representative who is against both of these measures, who's part of a coalition of people against medical marijuana, majority of legislators, who announced this week that if these measures fail, he will try through the legislature. And there hasn't been an effort like that in a while, and it would be a much more restricted medical marijuana type bill. That, as Representative Dan Douglas of Bentonville calls it, a Republican, a low THC, high CBD oil. So there's all sorts of science to debate about that, but there's at least one legislator, a Republican from Northwest Arkansas, kind of interestingly, to me at least, who says that he'll try something, kind of recognizing that there's not one, there's 2 different ballot issues that got on the ballot, that clearly a lot of people in Arkansas are thinking about this. And as you were saying, after this election, Arkansas will almost definitely be in the minority of states that offer less medical options and treatments than the rest of the country.
And on that ballot issue that you raised, I did, in Governor Hutchinson, in a press conference, that question was asked him about these late ballot issues going to the high court. And he said that he believes something should be done legislatively to prevent this from continuing to happen over and again, so that people will have this opportunity to vote for a fair vote once they go into the voting booth, to vote on the issues that are in the election, and the vote will be counted.
Yeah, court isn't itching, or necessarily itching anyway, to take these issues, but they keep getting, because of confusion, keep going to the court.
Yeah.
About Heather, or the early voting, Heather, which continues to grows in popularity across the country.
Right.
Do we draw any conclusions about that?
Well, at this point in time, for this electoral cycle, what the early voting is signaling, at least in Arkansas, is that there are a lot of decided voters. This is not a low information election cycle. By the time November 8th
I'm not
rolls
sure,
around-
but go ahead.
Right. In terms of low information, high profile, low information, but still voters in the voting booth will still be relying on simplified cues to make their ultimate decision when they press, accept ballot. But
They will have heard the names.
They've heard the names, they've seen the yard signs, they've at least seen one ad, and they have seen, or they at least have heard the battle cries, that and the barbs that have been passed between the campaigns. But heading into November 8th, it is anticipated by November 8th about 75% of the ballots will have already been cast, so it might be an actually anticlimactic vote election night. And as of yesterday, the numbers are in Arkansas that about 151,000 votes have already been cast. And the Secretary of State has also projected that they anticipate a 70% turnout of Arkansas's 1.7 million voters overall. So this stands to be a high turnout election in Arkansas, and it's following suit with national trends all over. Wherever you see these early votings, you're seeing longer lines, you're seeing higher turnout, and that's signaling that some voters have made their early deciders. But in this election cycle, it's polarized. You have early deciders who have probably known since convention who they're going to vote for, and then you have the lingering undecided voter who on November 8th they'll be staying in line and still not know who they're going to vote for. So those are the two distinct groups that we're seeing.
Well, because we like to retain our capacity for surprise anyway, is there any way to tell how that early vote is breaking?
At this point in time, early voting, based on previous trends, early voting will benefit Democratic candidates and have in other states. However, in Arkansas, because there is at least an 18-point lead for Trump being the preferred presidential candidate, what early voting is signaling, at least to me from where I'm sitting in this chair, is that you have the early decided voters, and though that right now is going to be a toss-up, but it's probably actually going to benefit the Republican Party in Arkansas. Usually the incumbent party is benefited most at the state level by early voting, but national trends, it has benefited the Democratic.
Poll numbers, take it away, Dr. Brown.
There's some, in some states, there are demographics that's showing that there's a high Hispanic turnout in Texas, showing that. I think Florida has also shown that number. So I think in some of the Latino voter registration groups are saying that they expect record turnout among this demographic, and as Heather said, a large number of that population is leaning Democrat, and I think you're also going to see that same trend. Although we don't have any information on that, I think we're seeing that same trend in Arkansas too. Yeah.
Well, the polls have been long and consistent since forever.
Yeah,
been pretty consistent on the outcome in Arkansas. We retain our capacity for surprise.
I don't see any surprises.
I guess the big surprise will be if Connor Eldridge or Hillary Clinton can get to 40%. That would be the big surprise. But Eldridge, in the recent poll from Talk Business and Politics in Hendrix College, he did go up, I think, maybe 5 or so percentage points from the last poll taken a month or so ago.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't see any surprises.
Right. Tell me if I'm wrong, but this could be a less than a cliffhanger on the evening 2 Tuesdays from now. I think by the time the Central Zone states report, we'll know who will. For certain who will be the next president.
Right. I mean, some races will be called at 7 p.m. Some races will be called at 7:30. So just to reiterate myself, I think it'll be an anticlimactic election night and an early bedtime for a lot of the pundits, which I'm sure they're probably looking forward to. But yeah, it won't be a cliffhanger, especially with the patterns already indicating that half, if not over half, of the ballots will be cast in early balloting. So as the polls close, there's going to be a lot of candidates declaring, calling the race, declaring the victory, or in conceding, because I think we're also going to see a large spread of victory between the races that are up. So we may not have a lot of close races.
You mentioned conceding, so that might be the big surprise of the night. The Donald Trump conceder.
If there's
that's the only cliffhanger, right? Because he wants to keep us in suspense. So, yeah.
All right, on to purely local matters, which may bear some reflection anyway, or influence on the national trend, and that is fiscal matters in the state of Arkansas. We have War Memorial Stadium is still on the policy agenda, so to speak. There's some significant pushback on that thing.
And
it's a part of a larger piece, and we're going into the fiscal 18 budget session.
And Governor Asa Hutchinson would characterize this as part of the larger effort of him to streamline state government, find efficiencies throughout, try to make lots of operations self-supporting in some way. We're talking about War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock, where the Razorbacks football team has had a bunch of historic games. It's a cultural touchstone for a lot of Arkansans. The actual money involved isn't that much to the state budget. It's like $400,000, $500,000. It's about half of the state's contribution to War Memorial. So it's not that much money, but it is kind of a point. It's something that Republican State Senator Bart Hester of Northwest Arkansas has wanted, and he's been a key vote on some issues in the past for the governor. The governor also moved it from a standalone independent commission that's under him. You keep this 8-member commission, but you put it under the Department of Parks and Tourism. So they've got a different budget structure there by having some parks and tourism resources to help them out. But I guess we'll see what happens in the next month or so by January when they try to figure this out. But it's such a small amount of money, but it's a big deal apparently to War Memorial. But it's not a big deal to normal SEC football teams.
Yeah, and I think that as you said, the big issue will come in the session when they vote on both the budget item and whether or not it will be a standalone entity within. Also, the governor announced that there's going to be an independent study from an outside consultant who probably can get a nice chunk of money for doing the study.
$500,000.
Yeah, to see what if there can be other efficiency. We don't know what the report will say, but this is, as you said, Steve, this is in the larger context of the budget issue. Hester he had earlier said he basically felt that the War Memorial should be sold, and then later on he said that it shouldn't get a subsidy. That was his wording of what they get from the state from a general revenue fund. So and so it's a larger context of as we move into the 2017 legislative session to see where the budget items are going. Are we going to see more streamlining or more cuts along those lines? He also called for cuts in higher education and other areas or education. So it's a larger budget item, budget issue.
Yeah, and the gentleman, Mr. Hester, gentleman from Cave Springs, also announced that he's going to have tax bill in there. He wants 9 figures in income tax cuts. Mr. Hutchinson, Governor Hutchinson, already had proposed or indicated that he would come through, was planning and pledged to a tax bill in January.
Yeah, when Senator.
So how close are they? Are they working in conjunction? What's going on?
Well, when Senator Hester released his plan, he kind of said he was releasing it because he hadn't seen the plan from the governor yet, and he wanted to kind of get the conversation rolling about this. He's in no way trying to strong-arm the governor on this in any way. I think he'd be pleased to work. I don't think he'd get very far, but he'd be pleased to work with him. It's about a $100 million cut, give or take a few million. What's different about Hester's plan than many other Republicans, like Andy Davis, who proposed things in the past, is that his income tax cut is more geared toward lower-income Arkansans. In the past, Republican tax cuts have been for the top earners in the tax bracket. This would have zero income tax for everyone below $21,000, and I think knock a point off if you make what is it, 21 to 50 or something?
Yes, 21. It was 21,000 to 35,000 originally. Okay. Now it goes from 21,000 to 50,000, which is a pretty broad expansion of that tax base. So, and this 100 million cut would benefit about 600,000 Arkansans, which is about 200,000 more than it originally does now. So it's a pretty broad. And as you said, Governor Hutchinson hasn't released his budget. We're expected, I think the deadline for that is early November 9th or 10th. So the governor will come out with his budget plan, and we'll see if these two plans are anywhere close or where the governor is leaning on this tax cut. 100 million is still quite a bit. And when you talk about everybody saying how tight the budget is going to be, so that's a pretty significant figure.
It looks like state government is not going to get rich. I can't look at a single agency or organ or entity of state government that's likely to see much of an increase that isn't federal or legally mandated.
Right, you're going to have to find $100 million out of the budget. You can't get it through $500,000 from War Memorial. There's only one War Memorial Stadium. There's not 75 of them in each county. So, but of course, the argument from people like Hester is, one, tax cuts are good because it gives you money that you're inherently entitled to because you earn it. They don't believe the government has any place to take the money. And the second is he believes that if there are income tax cuts, it will spur economic growth that will in turn return to the state somehow. Budget projections and numbers the past few months, though, have been below projections.
There is some pushback among members of Mr. Hester's own party and Governor Hutchinson's. Both gentlemen are Republicans. Some reluctance to embrace that.
Definitely not as out in the open as they were before the last session. Hutchinson's one of his big campaign promises running for governor was on a specific tax cut, but people seem to be waiting to see some more budget numbers.
Yeah, and I think there are some other issues out there, education, how much are we going to cut education? Are we going to cut prisons? There's also, economic development. People are talking about they want some additional tax credits. So that makes the budget even tighter and even tighter. So there's going to be a lot of pushback. I think that's going to be difficult. I think eventually that 105 million number has to come down or has to be adjusted a bit, and then the governor had said earlier this summer that he doesn't want to see a lot of tax credit, unless you come in with an offset to that. So it's going to be I think you're going to see there's a lot of fiscal discussion among the Republican Party that have become pretty heated.
Echoes of Washington, or at least the House of Representatives anyway.
Because members of the General Assembly are also going to become protectionist of their pet projects and the bread and butter of their home districts as well too, which is what I'm looking at, the posturing of these early projected budget release and with Governor Hutchinson also declaring that the War Memorial Stadium is now moved under the ADPT, is kind of insulating some of these pet projects. So adding to the heated discussion about what these budget projections are going to be.
Well, let's see if we can find some milk and honey. There was a nice report out of Washington this morning. GDP was kind of smoking.
Yeah, it was up a brisk 2.9%. That's the first estimate. It's not the final estimate. You get three estimates.
Well, smoking, I may have overstated it, but it was about 0.4 of a point better than was projected.
Yeah, I think the consensus was 2.4%, and also the Atlanta GDP now, they had said 2.1%. So it's in the second quarter it was 1.4%. So it's double the previous quarter. So and the other thing is the report showed that there was a pretty good consumer spending, government spending are the two major areas where we saw some growth. So that's interesting going into an election. And people sometimes tend to say, let's wait and see. But I think that's a good report for the Obama administration. Also, along with you're looking at the employment figures right now. So. Some people are saying that Democrats will take this report, and I've already seen a report from U.S. Labor Department Secretary Perez saying, "Wow, this is great for the U.S. economy. We're expanding, we're growing."
Beats emails from. Well, what about Arkansas Corporation, the big business in Arkansas?
We're right in the third quarter earnings season, so the banks have already reported. Bank of the Ozark, Home Bancshares, and Simmons Banks, which are our three major publicly traded banks, and they all came in very strong profits. I think Home Bancshares and Bank of those are now past the $10 billion asset, which goes from a small community bank, large community bank, to a small regional bank. So they are growing. On the flip side of that, we can look at the energy sector. Murphy Oil reported earlier this week, and their profits, they had a small profit in the second quarter, but in the third quarter, they're back into the red. and energy stocks are going to struggle for a while. So we've had some kind of mix. I think banks are good, energy sector is good, and then the others three-quarter earnings are pretty mixed. We still have Tyson, Walmart to come, and those are the bellwether stocks for the state of Arkansas.
Well, I did notice this morning, Wesley, in that 2-9 report from Washington, that was in spite of a slowdown in consumer spending. Now, is that seasonal, or that could have, if it's uniform, could have some implications for Arkansas spending?
Yeah, I think you're still seeing, and there's some other reports, the Consumer Confidence Report and another U.S. CPA group. They came out with a report saying consumers are making more money, their wages are up, but they're still cautious about, the election. They're cautious about who's going to be taken in, and they're cautious just for consumers had a lot of debt, and they're not wanting to put on a lot of more debt heading into the Christmas season. So I still think, as a lot of people think, that consumers drive the economy, and if we continue to, I still think they have a lot of personal income that's growing. And I think after the election and going into 2017, you're going to see that uptick. The one good news out there is that in Arkansas, home sales are in double digit, especially in Northwest Arkansas, and even in Central Arkansas. You're seeing home sales are robust. A Beige Book report from the Federal Reserve came out, and home sales, Arkansas leads the region in home sales. So that's the major issue for most consumers is where I'm going to live in home sales. So.
Well, the Fed was next on the agenda, but we're out of time. So you're off the hook for this week.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.